So the next news story that we got is that, speaking of DC Comics, the DC villain Deathstroke movie is in the works from the Raid director. He did the Raid and the Raid 2, I believe. So Gareth Evans is his name. He directed the Raid, which I've heard great things about that movie, in all honesty. And Deathstroke is the villain who first appeared in 1980 in the New Teen Titans #2. The character whose real name is Slade Wilson is an expert assassin with super strength and stamina, and he's been played by Manu Bennett on CW's Arrow. He's been in numerous, cartoon shows. He was the main villain for the Teen Titans cartoon show. And you look at this, and there's rumors that I'm not sure if he's confirmed that he's going to be in the Justice League, that Deathstroke is, but it was rumored that, he was previously cast being played by Joe Manganiello, or as I like to call him, Flash Thompson in the first Spider-Man movie, which, in all honesty, you look at the picture of him in there, and then look at him like in Magic Mike or in the Deathstroke, you're like, they don't look alike. Like you see some facial stuff, you're like, they look so weird. But he was rumored to be in the Ben Affleck starring and directing and written the Batman movie.
I don't even think that was a rumor. I think that was confirmed for a while with the first Batman script that Ben Affleck was co-writer on with Jeff Johns, and Ben Affleck at that time was directing, and then it was later on, oh, now I'm not going to direct, and then it was, oh, we're working on a whole new script, and so they cast this guy who was looking so forward to playing this character, and suddenly he didn't have a movie anymore. So I'm glad that they're talking about giving him his own film, and while I'm not big on villain movies, and Suicide Squad aside, I just don't necessarily enjoy watching a movie centered on a villain. I'm not jumping up and down for like a Venom movie, which I also don't think is going to have anything to do with Spider-Man anyways. But Deathstroke is somebody who warrants enough story. It's just that what I remember being introduced to Deathstroke with was the Teen Titans and the Titans hunt and the Judas contract and everything else. So if you use it as an establishment to then have him jump off of that into something where he gets to play the villain for something else, it probably won't be Titans, since they're planning on doing Titans for TV at this point. I can appreciate that this would be something that they would do. And Joe Manganiello is, I haven't seen him in a lot of stuff, but what I've seen him in, I've liked him, and certainly personality-wise in his real life, he's cool. Beats saying True Blood. Yeah, remember, I Ain't Got Time to TV. I
think True Blood was the first Ain't Got Time to TV.
Yeah, it was. I've only done a couple, and because I ain't got time for that segment. But I think he's perfectly fine, and I'm glad that he's going to get the opportunity to play the character. I don't know that this character would have worked in a situation of having him alone go up against the whole Justice League, although that has been a storyline in the comics before, but it was a slightly different league, and it was in a flashback, but it was pretty cool. One of my favorite scenes actually is when all of the Justice League, and this is more of a Bronze Age league of, I think, Elongated Man and Barry Allen's Flash and Oliver Queen's Green Arrow. Oliver Queen, they're all teamed up on this guy. Zatanna was there, and they're all trying to bring him down, and Green Arrow was stabbing him in his empty eye socket with one of his arrows, and it was just one of the coolest freaking things in comics at that point. It was like, oh shit, I kind of really dig Green Arrow right now. All that said, the DC film universe, we know, is still such a weird place. It's so amorphous. It hasn't really figured out what it's doing from what reports we're getting, because every week it's like, oh, this character's getting a movie, but it's not really part of the DC film universe. It's just its own side thing. Is it connected? Is it not connected? And you just don't know. And they keep saying stuff, and it's just so bizarre. And I understand that Marvel probably regrets some of the interconnectivity now with things like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Inhumans especially, because those things don't really work going towards the films. They're not at the same level. I wish Agent Carter would have done more, and certainly I loved the show, and I love Haley Atwell in the role. But because she was utilized in the show, I feel like they kind of got rid of her in the films to a degree, and that's really too bad. Although her storyline could have just ended in the first Captain America, and that would have sucked even worse.
Yeah.
I see stuff like this, and is this character in the same universe as Ben Affleck's Batman anymore? Or is he in the same universe as Joss Whedon's Batgirl movie, or as the proposed Nightwing film, or any of these other things? And this would have been a great thing to do and say, hey, we're not utilizing you in the Batman movie, but we'll put you in as the villain in the Nightwing movie, which kind of makes more sense anyways, if you go back to the origins of the characters.
Yeah.
But they're not even doing that. So I don't know. At this point, it's as up in the air as the Captain Marvel / Shazam film, where we can't call him Captain Marvel anymore.
I look at this in a slightly different way. Looking at the Marvel, and because this is what I always give when I'm talking to people about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is one of the things I love about it is that no two movies are the same. Like, and we give the example of, you want a heist movie in here with superheroes, you go to Ant-Man. You want a political thriller, you go to Winter Soldier, and all that. I feel like you look at who the director is and what he's really known for with the martial arts film The Raid and its sequel, and they both have such unique, ambitious fight sequences. And you look at a lot of the things that he's done, and it's this thing that it could be DC going, all right, let's get different people who are going to tell stories in different ways, because that's what, like I think they're realizing now that what made Marvel successful can make them successful too. And it's fine that they're using it, because we're going to get great stories out of this in theory. And that's don't do a connected universe just to do a connected universe, because then you're going to lose track of the characters. You're going to lose track of who these characters are and what they're supposed to be. But yet do a good assassin type movie with Deathstroke here, with a guy who does really ambitious fight sequences and is known for doing films that have such ambitious fight sequences, as opposed to the target practice ricochet thing that we got with Will Smith's Deadshot in Suicide Squad.
No, I agree. That's definitely what I want, is to have films where the characters feel like they're honest to the character that they're starring. I've argued, obviously, that I did not enjoy the take that Zack Snyder had on Superman in the DC film universe. We'll see what with Joss Whedon's assistance, Justice League turns out to be like. I still look at the films and it's all still very muddy and weird to me and doesn't feel like Justice League at all. But I do see a lot more humor and fun in it, which is perfectly okay. I'm just, it's going to be hard for me to become satisfied with where these things have started.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, absolutely. If you're saying, oh, we want to do a Deathstroke film, it's strange to me that that's a movie that you're kind of putting out so early, but then so is Suicide Squad, and so are some of the other choices, and none of them are bad. And if you're going to do it, then this seems like a good opportunity to do something with Deathstroke. I just also want to remind you that what works about Marvel is not just that all of the films, not all of them, but most of the films are different or have different styles, but they can still have the same characters be in those different films with each other, and they still make sense. Captain America is in the political thriller of Winter Soldier, and he's in the classic feeling of World War II in the first Avenger, and then he's in the Avengers movies, and he feels consistent to himself all the way across the board. But then the way that he's utilized, because of the different situations and the different films he's in, feels honest too, and they all get to be their own thing while still being true to him, being true to Iron Man, being true to Thor, Black Widow, and all of them. And I love that. And so it's not just, oh, we need a character to plug into this. Okay, well, we're going to put the Hulk here. Well, the Hulk makes no sense at all, because this totally goes against his nature and his demeanor and everything else. Well, it doesn't matter because we've got the Hulk. We're going to use the Hulk. Okay, I really felt like the story called for, say, Valkyrie, but sure, now we're making it a Hulk story, which is not to put any slams on Thor Ragnarok, which looks awesome. But again, Thor, you see Thor in the first 2 Thor movies, very different movies from at least what we've seen so far of Thor Ragnarok. Yet you look at Thor Ragnarok and you think, but this is the Thor that I followed all the way across. I don't see him as a different character. I just see this as a progression into something else that looks a lot more fun, which is great, which is absolutely great. I hope that DC lands this stuff. I really want them to succeed. Again, I've always been a DC person more than a Marvel person when it came to the comics and the characters. One of the things that DC was talking about years ago, before I think even Marvel had their movies starting up or taking off yet, there was supposed to be a Green Arrow film called Supermax, and it was Green Arrow wound up in a prison with a whole bunch of supervillains. I still kind of long to see that movie because it doesn't take anything away from who Green Arrow is. It's not like this couldn't happen to the character in any kind of regular comic storyline. It just seemed like a great situation of taking a superhero, putting him in that, and it sidesteps we have to get his origin story. It sidesteps all these tropes that superhero movies we had built up expectations of what they were. This is another thing where I could have seen that working.
Yeah.
And Suicide Squad on paper was a perfectly good idea to try to do when it gave them an opportunity to do something that hadn't been done before.
Yeah, that's sort of where I feel like DC's trying to do, instead of setting up their heroes, because then it's like we would then need or be expecting backstory, doing villain pieces that have hints of the heroes in there eliminates that need. That's what I'm getting at with, or feeling like is happening with these whole, because we got the Flash and we got Batman in Suicide Squad. Theoretically, we would get Batman or Nightwing or some of the other Teen Titans in a Deathstroke movie, depending on how they want to do it, of course, to where it would help alleviate, to compare it to Marvel. One of the reasons why Spider-Man Homecoming is my favorite movie is they didn't do the origin. It's a selfish reason on my part, but when you've seen Uncle Ben die twice and you've seen 2 different actors ugly cry, well, Tobey Maguire cry, and then Andrew Garfield, I believe he did more ugly crying with Uncle Ben dying. You're like, well, do we need to see it again? No. And
yeah,
so
they distilled everything that you love from Spider-Man, and they got rid of the excess that you would normally need to tell that story. The classic, I told you that story so I could tell you this one. And at this point in time, it's like, no, just tell me the good one. Get rid of the prologue, just get me to the hits and make that happen. And I would probably be far less critical of this if I didn't feel such disappointment in the DC film universe so far. And so I have to adjust my thought process, because every new movie that they do is still an opportunity for them to prove themselves. And it's far better to look at it that way than it is to say something like every new movie that Marvel does is me waiting to see them screw it up. I would rather see success than failure.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'm a guy who rants and does reviews online, it's amazing to think that that's a possibility, that I'd be rooting for somebody. I have to see that first thing that pulls me in happen before I can be more behind it. And I would argue to some degree that Wonder Woman was that. I didn't love Wonder Woman as much as I had hoped to, but the problems I had with it were far fewer and far lesser than what I was having with the other DC movies. And even before that, Suicide Squad to me had a lot of things that I enjoyed, even though I thought it was a terrible movie and not at all concurrent with the characters themselves in some ways. In other ways it was. But it just kind of all comes together into a big old mess. And Beat is mentioning that it was 20 minutes too long. I guess if they had cut out the video game openers for all the characters, only the characters that mattered, and the one that that didn't matter didn't get a video game opener and died 5 minutes into being on screen. Yeah, I can piss and moan about what they've done in the past, but it's better to acknowledge that even as far back as Suicide Squad, I felt like maybe they were moving in the right direction. And it's possible that my frustrations really all stem from the creative force behind those first two movies, who is still a part of this upcoming movie. And that's going to be not so much a strike against it, but a problem for me, possibly, of enjoying it. And I don't want to say that he's incapable of making a good film, because there were parts there that were there before we saw Joss Whedon get involved with it that looked like it could have been on the right track. We just have to see where that track actually leads us.
I feel like I want to end on this. I've talked with this about Justice League with other people, people at my church, and because of the situations that happened, and Joss Whedon stepping in to help, finish the movie, finish principal photography and reshoots or whatever it was. I feel like a lot of people are going, especially with how a lot of the TV spots are going, where you're seeing a lot more quips and humor in the movie. There's a big part of me that, with interviews or behind the scenes, on the DVD, where, or like the director's commentary, which honestly, I would love to hear that director's commentary of Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder talking about this movie. But that's just me, because I agree with you on a lot of the things, but I still respect Zack Snyder for what he does here. Where it might not be good and it might not hit, it might make me mad, but to hear him explain what he was going through, what his thought process was with shooting the scenes, and then to go, when it gets to a funny point and he's like, it was a good line, it was an ad lib or something like this, and you go, wait, that wasn't Joss Whedon? Because I feel like a lot of people would assume that a lot of the humor is going to be Joss Whedon.
Yeah, they're gonna say the good stuff is Joss and the bad stuff is Zack, or the opposite. Because if you're the person who enjoyed those first two films, you may feel that Joss Whedon is going to come in and screw it up because maybe you're a person who doesn't enjoy the Avengers movies, or you don't like Joss's work from before. You don't like all the snap comedy and one-liners or whatever else, or the Scooby Gang from Buffy way back. It depends on your taste. And so when you've got two very different feeling filmmakers making something in congruity with each other, it's going to be challenging, and someone's going to want to tear it apart and say who did what.
Yeah.
And I like your idea of having commentary with both of them, because I would like to see the respect paid to Zack Snyder for doing so much of what he did in this film, because he did launch it. And for good or ill, whatever your opinion, he put a lot of work into it, and only left it because of horrifyingly bad experiences in his private life. And it would be nice to see him get to reap some of the rewards from it for however it comes out. But I will say, there's something to be said for, between the Hulk movie by Ang Lee and the Incredible Hulk movie co-produced with Marvel, with Universal, I don't even know who it was who directed it, but they knew what to leave and what to take. And again, by the time we got to Avengers and the Hulk and that, same thing. They knew what to leave and they knew what to take. They even brought back Thunderbolt Ross from the Incredible Hulk to have in the Civil War movie.
Louis Leterrier.
It's picking the good and knowing when to leave the stuff that didn't work. So maybe you don't feel like you have to go back and watch that Ang Lee Hulk movie to get your whole Hulk story. Just give us enough to have us move forward. And that's, like you said, with the Spider-Man thing, is we all know Spider-Man. We know that this isn't the same Spider-Man, but we don't have to pick through the same Spider-Man stories again to get to what makes a good Spider-Man story now.
Yeah.
And if going forward, DC's film universe decides that they want to see changes in the way that Justice League is used, or Superman is used, or Batman is used, then they don't have to be beholden to what came before it.
For more on this Galactic Network podcast, go to gncast.com. That's GNCASTS.com.